This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everybody. Jean here, and welcome back to another episode of Breakthrough to Creativity. I'm interviewing experts from around the world about how to get to a place where inspiration flows naturally through you and how to see your natural gifts and talents as a way to make some extra money. So today's guest is Amy Ostreicher. Amy is a PTSD peer-to-peer specialist. She's an artist, an author, and a writer for Huffington Post. She's an Audie Award-nominated playwright and a speaker for TEDx and RAIN. And she is an award-winning actress and playwright, sharing the lessons learned from trauma through her writing, mixed media art, performance, and inspirational speaking. So, Amy, you're very welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So, can you tell us just a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
How I got to where I am today. I mean, creativity, seriously. From the time I was born, I was kind of a singing, dancing, making stuff person, and that was always my way to express myself. So I jumped into musical theater. I loved creating things, and I loved performing and being on stage. What I didn't anticipate was, when I was 18, I had a big medical trauma where I had a blood clot unexpectedly, and my stomach literally exploded. And so, for someone that really never had health problems her entire life, waking up in an ICU months later, after I just learned I was in a coma for months at 18 years old, my life had changed overnight. So just before this, I was applying to musical theater college programs, all this kind of stuff, and now I was just waking up in a hospital bed, just not knowing where to start. So really, creativity became my savior because I had no way of going forward except what I knew what I loved to do, which was create. So really, at first it was writing what I was going through. Then it was painting. I picked up a paintbrush by accident. My mother had just brought in like craft kits to the hospital, and that became a way for me to express what I couldn't put into words. And then eventually I created a one-woman musical about what I had been through called Gutless and Grateful. So, I mean, creativity was a way I could harness all my passion and still feel like me after my life had changed overnight. So that's how it kind of reclaimed my identity. But in terms of creating a livelihood after that, I didn't know that I could use creativity and doing what I love to somehow put together something that could make really a career. The way that happened was I saw, discovering visual art, creating a one-woman show about my crazy, life. I saw that as an unexpected, detour, because, I always loved performing, but I never knew I would be performing about this and speaking about trauma and all of that. So I thought about everything, and I'm like, well, I'm sorry that all this happened to me. Yet, if all these things never happened, all these crazy detours, I would have never created what I did. So I started like a kind of love my detour movement where I encourage, everyone to start sharing their story through creativity, through assessing, the twists and turns in their path and how it led them to where they are. And that has really inspired a lot of people. And so I've created programs around that, workshops, because the truth is we all have detours in life, and I think we all want to assess for ourselves, how it's led us to where we are, and how we can, be happy things happen to us instead of think, why me? Why did this happen? So yeah, that's how creativity helped me get to that point.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And yeah, actually, I had no idea exactly of the details of that trauma. And I just think you're incredibly courageous. And I'm I'm not surprised that, you know, your creative expression has healed you so profoundly, but you know, I just think it's such a testament to your own strength that that you followed it through, you know, and you really kind of pursued, you know, fearlessly where that would lead. And I'm so excited, like, for what, you know, what came through for you. And you know, love my detour. I love that idea, you know, with just kind of putting this kind of you know, just kind of putting it into this kind of movement that so many people experience anyway. So thank you for sharing all of that with us. And I suppose I would love to move into, you know, a little bit about you know, how you kind of balance your work as an artist and as a performer with also being an entrepreneur, because so many people, you know, would love to actually turn their art forms into some kind of income generating business, and you've done that so well. So how do you balance that in your lifestyle?
Yeah, it's a balancing act, but the thing is, you really have to take both sides seriously. For someone that's impatient like me, and sometimes I can get ahead of myself thinking like product, not process, when I'm thinking, okay, how am I gonna, make something out of this, a living? It's hard, but I learned that this is so important. So first there's the artist side, and now I'm talking to anyone who doesn't even consider themselves an artist, because I feel like creativity is an imperative, essential mindset that we all need in order to create an innovative career. I mean, there are so many self startups, all these kind of things that people are really thinking out of the box to take anything they're passionate about and get a slightly different angle, which feels new and exciting to people. And I really feel like you need to practice some creativity to start thinking like that. So, I mean, I say anyone can just start with a doodle. Start by scribbling, start by getting out your ideas. Any kind of forum where you're not thinking, where you're just free writing, free expressing, free drawing, whatever. But it's a way to just start with an idea and see where it takes shape. That's like the very kind of brainstorming first part. And then you need to set aside time where you can, whatever you call that creative outlet, you need to, set a timer and say, for this amount of time, no matter what the practicalities in my life are, I'm going to set aside this time, because that gives us an opportunity to maybe see things from a different angle. Then there's the, practical side. And listen, what we eventually want to make money with may have nothing to do with being in what we call an artist or whatever. But I really feel like, people absorb things in different ways in terms of our target audience. They could take things visually, audibly, intellectually, metaphorically. And so I feel like whatever we're doing, we can reach people in those different ways if we have creativity and if we're able to see things from different angles. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I love what you're saying about just starting with a doodle, you know, and I mean, I definitely want to come back to that, and about, kind of speaking to those people who have said to me, Jean, like, how can you tell if I've got talent or not? And I mean, I'm like, oh my God, like, how can you even be asking me about, is it a question of talent? Because we are also innately creative, and it's just a matter of actually doing, getting confident about it. But what I'd love to ask you about is, so I really identify with you in terms of that balancing act, where you're like, couple of days a week you're working on your business, and then the other couple of days a week you're working on your craft and what you're drawn to at the time. Can you share with us a little bit more about what that feels like for you, and what's the difference for you when those days when you're just like plowing through work, as opposed to in that kind of self-expression groove where you're just like more feeling your way through it. And what kind of comes up for you with that balancing act, and how do you manage it in your life?
Well, first of all, I gotta say that, when I get out of bed, the first thing I think is, you know what, maybe it would be better to just get the practical stuff out of the way, because I know this is on my mind. I gotta get that done, I got that done. And then by the time, it's nighttime, you're like, where did the day go? But so sometimes it takes a lot of discipline to say, you know what, whatever will get done. But let me just cap myself off for 15 minutes. I'm just going to do something that has nothing to do with the practical things, whether it's some kind of free expression. Even if you know what your day entails and you say, okay, today I can only do 10 minutes, and it might be hard to leave, but that's what it is. I feel like when I do that, I'm always, by the time I go to bed, I'm always happy I did that. And I know that if I just jumped right into my business matters, I never, would have gotten a chance to do that. There's Elizabeth Gilbert does a great TED talk about finding time for creativity. And she says, people that have, she knows stories of people that have all hours of work, and they find a time like in their stairwell to like just take a journal and write some notes. So I feel like even if you have to budget out that time, I think it's important for that balance in our heads to at least let our psyche know that we can find ways to be creative. And it doesn't have to be this big to-do setup where I have to have my studio and my paint. It can be taking a little illustrated notebook with us and just you're running under a tree for a second and just sketching what you see. And even if we get into our muscles, that practicing just for a flash moment, I'm going to use some creativity, I mean, that's just a good practical thinking skill that will be good for us in the long run anyway. So
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it sounds to me that it's more like half and half on a daily basis, rather than half the week, with my businesswoman hat on, and the other half the week with my artist hat on.
yeah, think micro steps. I mean, again, like I get intimidated when I'm like, you know what, let me make some time for creativity. It can really be the tiniest, if it's a stick figure on the back of the napkin while you're having your lunch break, fine. But I think we need that for our psyche, that just every day we do one little thing, and those little things can add up. So.
Yeah, no, I love that, Amy. And I mean, for me, I find, and it's funny, I actually do the same thing. Even though in theory, I think some days I'd like to have just full days where I'm just doing art. But
Would we all?
yeah, but like I find the most important part of the day for me isn't like checking that thing off my to-do list, but it's actually, when I did that drawing, or I finished that piece that I was working on, and that's the thing that kind of stands out for me from the day. It was like the most meaningful part of the day.
Right.
So, it's amazing, really. So when we were talking about these detours in our lives, and you spoke about it so beautifully, and about how you even based your work around that. So speaking to people in our audience, like, how do you think people can manage those kind of detours through their creative pursuits?
I actually have little fun worksheets on this too that I love. Sometimes I call it my detour navigation sheets. Sometimes it's just writing down, this happened, and because of this I took this next step. Because of this I took this next step, and you just trace what happens, and you'll be surprised that you'll realize things that you didn't even know until you have a chance to just sit with it and think, wow, all these, I never would have discovered, these flowers along my path had I not seen this. There's all the Pixar movies. I learned this when I was studying playwriting, that they have like a 6-step formula that they use for all Pixar movies, like Finding Nemo, all this kind of stuff. Like the setup is, one day this fish or whatever was this. Then this happened. Because of that, this happened, and this is how he got rescued, and this is what he learned from it, and this is how the story wraps up. I mean, that's the story of a detour. So, I mean, I think we can always use this and see how we grow from those. So, yeah.
So, so that sounds really great when it's like in hindsight, and you're kind of thinking, okay, how did I get here? But I suppose when somebody is kind of feeling a little bit lost or whatever, and they're kind of thinking, okay, this is kind of, I'm not really sure how to make this decision, or thinking about like what's the best decision to make. I mean, how would you advise them, almost like to prevent them, making the wrong decision?
Right. So my personal story on this is in 2016, I did my first big TEDx talk about detours and finding the beauty in life, and all this medical stuff happened to me, but because of that, I ended up where I am now, and I love my detour. And part of it was how I ended up getting married. And then a month later, I got a divorce thrown at me that I totally didn't expect. And so the first thing I thought to myself was, I really do not like this whole detour thing. Like, screw all this. And then I thought about it for a second, and then I'm like, wait a minute, like what do you do when you think you've figured exactly what the meaning is from your detour and you've come to terms with it, and then something else happens? Like, what if you're not ready to love my detour? And so I thought about it. I thought about everything I said in my TED talk, and I thought, being like a detourist, which I call us detour lovers, is that all you have to do is, you don't know the outcome, but you just go step by step, not knowing where the path may lead, but just seeing the flowers on every step of the way. And, it's like placing yourself on the tiny head of a pin where all you see is that one moment. And so you might not love your detour, but if you say, I trust my detour right now, then you can only be on that one step. And then that one step will eventually take you to the next step. It's what we tell people when we have anxiety, like, just be here now. Don't think about what's happening tomorrow. Really easy to say, but very hard to do. But if you, use that creativity, which I did, and think of it as, okay, right now I'm just seeing the flowers along this path. And if you're right here, that will unexpectedly and naturally take you to the next step. And then eventually those steps will give you the hindsight. But until you do that, you just have to trust it. And that's what I learned. So.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Thanks. I know another thing that you share is about using your creative pursuits for a daily mindset. So could you tell us a little bit more about how you advise people to do that?
Totally. I call them my 4 hardcore skills to resilience, because I think resilience is something we all need, and I think creativity is the best way to get there. So I call it, creating hope, stories, and gratitude. Those are all part of creativity, by the way. But hope, I think, is a really important thing that we all have to have, but not in this kind of inspirational kind of beam of light that, oh, okay, I don't know what's going on right now, but I'm just going to hope it's better. Hope I think of as like willing suspension of disbelief. Like, it's a lie that we tell ourselves. So even if we have to fabricate, a better outcome, it's creating hope for ourselves. So hope is something we have to create. If we're not successful in our art now, we create this kind of affirmation that, next year I will be selling, this, and that's kind of our manifestation. So I think we all need to practice this kind of hope. The second thing is stories. And I learned this by first finding a book of mythology and reading through all the stories. And I'm thinking, wow, like each of these stories are so different, but they all kind of go through the same kind of archetypal hero's journey, this set path. So if I don't know where I'm going, maybe I can just follow kind of the steps that these heroes take. So sometimes I think that the best way for us to learn how to get through our own detours is to read some kind of fairy tale or story that we might not be able to specifically relate to, but we can kind of trace our own steps and create parallels. Then the third thing is gratitude. And I learned this in the hospital. Actually, I was so mad after a really disastrous surgery that I just made a list from A to Z, and I made myself write one thing I was grateful for every letter of the alphabet. And the beauty of that was it didn't just make me feel like, okay, I'm grateful for all this, blah, blah, blah. Forcing myself to think of one thing I was grateful for each letter, it actually made me reaffirm what my values were. And your values are kind of like on a detour, it's like your arrows that tell you where you should go. When your life changes overnight, sometimes it's hard to know what we stand for anymore. So making that easy list for me was a way that I could easily remember, okay, this is what's important for me. So even though my life changed overnight, this is what's still important. So I know where to go from here. And then the last thing is creativity, because a lot of the times, we think we can talk or write or talk our way out of something or think our way out of something. Sometimes what we're going through might be so overwhelming that we need some kind of other medium for expression. And that's why I say, whether it's like improvising a recipe or dancing or playing a song or making a scribble, sometimes we need some kind of way to get out of our mind. So those are my 4 kind of hardcore skills to resilience. I think we all need to practice. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's, you just said so much in there. I'm just absorbing it all. And yeah, I love all of that. I think if you can, step into all of those things, it's going to really set you up for having, a very resilient mindset. I suppose one of the things that comes to mind is that how it doesn't have to be like a trauma along the lines of, a life and death experience like you experience. It could just be something more, something more kind of, that people would experience on a more regular basis, or more.
Yeah, that's what my whole Love My Detour thing is about. I have like a Why Not Wednesday column on my site where any detourist can write about any little big thing that happened in their lives. And what I love about this column that anyone can contribute to is, you hear very difficult stories of, loss and things like that, but you also hear very little things like, my job changed, and because of that, I discovered this whole other thing, or like a good thing, like we moved to Hawaii, and because detours can be anything. And what I try to express from my story is that I know my story is extreme, but that's not the point. The point is I had to use basic skills that anyone can use. So theoretically, we can all use these same skills to get through anything, and I still use those today because the thing in life, one detour happens and another one starts, and there's no end. So yeah.
Totally. Yeah, no, I support you 100%. Yeah, I love that. And likewise, it can make somebody, and it's not just for people who've experienced that either. Like with, for somebody who's never had that kind of experience, it just makes them stronger, more relaxed, more in tune with others, in tune with themselves, and builds resilience that way. So yeah, I love what you're saying. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about the entrepreneurial side as well, because I mean, creativity is such a really important part of any entrepreneurial endeavor, really. I mean, that's like the backbone of entrepreneurship, I think. Can you tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are about turning a passion into a business? How do you think creativity can really kind of kickstart that experience for people?
Again, there are a million ideas, but the key is to being an entrepreneur is you have to present it in a way that no one's ever heard before. I mean, you'll see, I mean, I watch Shark Tank. I watch a lot of things. I see what, the latest kind of spin-offs are. And you really, to have an innovative product that's exciting to people, you have to present it in a way that you were the first, and that also that people from a range of backgrounds and abilities can understand and absorb. So for me, I think creativity is a way to take whatever, I mean, first you have to really nail down what your business goals are, and then you have to think in terms of packaging this. How can I present it in a way that everyone can relate to, that's going to feel appealing to them? And that's why I love my whole detour concept, because it's taking a very kind of overarching metaphor and incorporating any kind of detour that anyone's experienced, so many people feel like they can relate. And kind of in this day and age when everyone is sharing like everything that's happened to them, and people have so much of a say through social media and things like that, you want things that directly speak to people, that they're going to want to feel comfortable representing. So that's how I've used creativity entrepreneurially. So
Yeah, yes, that's lovely. Yeah, thanks for explaining that to us. So we're almost out of time, but I guess I was just wondering, was there anything that we haven't already mentioned that you would love to share with our audience, or remind them that maybe they've overlooked when it comes to their creativity?
yeah, I gotta end with a little story that, first of all, my father is so scarred by his fourth grade teacher telling him, when he held up like a picture that he made with crayons, like, that's a bad painting, you'll never be an artist. This is just to tell anyone to just be fearless. And even if you don't consider yourself an artist, I mean, be proud of it, because we all deserve to be artists. I was doing some live painting for an art show, and this, at this point, like, my work was shown in a bunch of places, and this little kid came up to my work and he told his mom, he's like, that's just newspaper and scribbles. And so the mother, obviously she, like, pulled her kid away, like, you can't do that. But like, I was thrilled, because that's the message that I want people to get from my art. Like, that's all it is. It's newspaper and scribbles, meaning like anyone can do this. I mean, I think art shouldn't be, we shouldn't kind of, give our value to what makes us exclusively, on a higher platform than everyone else, but we're doing things that everyone kind of wishes they could do. And I think also entrepreneurially, that's what makes people gravitate to our art, something that's relatable, that they're kind of looking at like, I really could do that too. I mean, the best kind of art, I think, is art that empowers people. Not only inspires them, but empowers them with the skills that, what, I could do that too. And that's also how we can use our art to branch off into, workshops and teaching. Even if we don't have so much skill ourselves, we can teach people to be like us, which I think is a cool thing. So.
Well, I have to say, your words are just warming my heart, Amy. I mean, even today I was working on my own art, and it didn't turn out as I wanted it to turn out. I mean, I would definitely count myself as a recovering perfectionist, and so I'll show you. I'll actually show you. Just give me 1 second. I'll just grab it. One second.
I'll grab it. I'll grab mine. I'll have like show and tell.
And so I'm trying to draw this landscape here, and as you can see, it's beautiful. It's in Ontario, in the Kawartha Lake, so it's a beautiful tourist spot.
Oh
and I'm there trying to use watercolors, and this is like my first attempt, just like messing around with the watercolors, and and I'm like, this is awful. This is, and it's like when I hear you talk about, your art, and just like really like bringing it down to, the most simple thing, and just not being pretentious at all about it, and just thinking, okay, I don't care how it turns out. I just want to, really just have it like expressive. It actually like boost my own confidence and my own kind of, I just like forgive myself completely for how my art is turning out. So,
I mean, the art world is like kind of like the emperor's new clothes. Like we're all looking at it like, okay, I'm supposed to really think this is impressive. I mean, I think the art that really speaks to us is the art that is authentic and that comes from the heart. I mean, that's what I've seen from my own experience resonates with people. I
yeah.
gotta say, I got this on a mouse pad, but this is I'm actually performing now. A one-woman musical that uses these are canvases of mine that use artwork projections as part of a way to tell the story, and the reason why I think that art is so helpful in telling the story is because they were really made like from the heart, so they are like the subtext behind my songs and all that. So yeah, I wanted to add one thing to anyone that's watching, that anyone can contribute to this Love My Detour column. So, and you too. So just send me a note. The only requirement is you just have to mention any detour in your life and how it ended up getting you to a certain point. That's all.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. And I know you have a free gift for the audience. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's a little free ebook about creativity and little exercises for you to start mapping out your own detour and get creative. And a little excerpt from my upcoming book available next month, My Beautiful Detour. Woo! So, yeah.
That's awesome. Is that available on Amazon? Just to be clear here, or
I'm going to have its official launch in September on Amazon, but right now there are exclusive copies through my site. But we're getting there, so yeah.
And where can people find you? Where's your social media at? And
Social media, I'm all over the place, but you can. Most of my stuff is on my website, amyoes.com. But I have a Facebook page, Twitter. Twitter, I'm amyoes. I have all these social media handles, but I guess I can give them to you. I don't know. You guys aren't gonna remember all this, are you? I don't know.
no, but, I just. Yeah, I mean, I'll have to go to your site and check them out. Yeah.
Well, my website is amyoes.com. And
Awesome.
yeah, I love to hear from everyone. I'm also touring my musicals all over. I do them as like, I pair them with like PTSD and creativity talk back. So
Yeah.
I love to travel to Ontario or wherever. But yeah. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Amy, thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to working with you again in the future.
I want a guest post from you on your beautiful detour.
You got it. You got it.
All right, bye.
All right, bye. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow.